It's an extraordinary news story, this. A new 20-page booklet apparently is going to be sent as a survival manual to all French citizens to prepare for invasion or any other imminent threat to the country. 63 different measures are listed to help the French in case of armed conflict or a natural disaster, industrial accident, or indeed a nuclear leak. How to protect yourself, those around you, what to do if the threat is imminent. Now, let's face it, France doesn't have a strong history of defending itself over the years. Again, our French cousins, you're welcome. Philip Ingram, what do you make of this, and should we have one here?
I think it's actually a very good idea because it's giving people insights. It's the government turning around and saying, look, we are in unstable times. You need to be aware of that and start to prepare yourself psychologically. And we have organisations that people have never heard of that have got all of this in the UK.
It's almost like we had things like pre-pandemic planning.
Well, we do, and local resilience. They're in local resilience forums. They're in every council that there is across the country, and they've got all of this sitting there. Let's let people know
Make it
about
public.
it.
OK, fair enough. Well, let's talk to Gavin Mortimer. He's a French correspondent at the Spectator magazine and joins us. A very good afternoon to you, Gavin.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, what has been the reaction in France to this, and why have they suddenly issued it now? Is this related to the Ukraine war and the Russian threat? What's it about?
It is related to Ukraine. Yes, it's part of Macron's policy of portraying himself really as the president, not just of France, of course, but ultimately his aim is to be president of Europe when his job expires in 2027. So he's very much taken the lead, along with Keir Starmer, in recently with the crisis sparked by Donald Trump's administration. And this booklet is part of it. And I would disagree with Philip there that most of it is stating the bleeding obvious. Keeping paracetamol in your medicine cabinet, closing the doors if there's a nuclear leak. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, I would never have thought of that. I mean, a lot of us, told, again, possible blackouts, have a torch, where it is, make sure you have some canned goods and like. But this reminds me of, those adverts and those booklets were given out, risk of nuclear war, hide under a table. Yeah, well, brilliant, thanks. I'm not entirely sure that's going to be that much use to me in the big scheme of things. But, I mean, is there a genuine feel in France that there is, a possibility of an imminent threat? Because to a certain extent, we all live under the threat of some sort of horrific terror attack that could be nuclear or biological or chemical at any time. I mean, the terror threat in France, I think is off the scale, and Germany as well, what we've seen from Islamist extremism lately, but also, of course, the threat from Ukraine, from Russia. We are constantly in Britain. Look, we've had a terror attack on our streets by the Russians with the Skripal poisoning, which did actually end up, killing somebody. So should we perhaps be taking all of this a bit more seriously?
Well, there was actually, it's interesting you mentioned, Julia, about the Islamist attacks, because 10 years ago, if you remember, in the beginning of 2015, the Charlie Hebdo massacre and the Jewish supermarket in Paris, and then in November the Bataclan and the other attacks in Paris that cost the lives of 130 Parisians. And after that, the government, quite correctly, issued a series of instructions what to do if you're caught in a terror attack. And of course, just last month there was another Islamist attack in Mulhouse in eastern France. It's ongoing, and that was available online. There were adverts placed in newspapers, so it was something, drawing your attention to it. The fact that this is a 20-page booklet going to be delivered to 30 million homes. Interestingly, a French journalist contacted a printer friend of hers and said that how much is this going to cost? Oh, around about 6 million. This is a country that's already 3.3, I'll repeat that, 3.3 trillion euros in debt. So it's very much, there's a lot of cynicism in France that this is just, Macron sort of perpetuating the fear, because let's not forget,
without
Julia,
doing anything about it.
Exactly. And 5 years ago, Macron, almost exactly 5 years ago, five years ago this week, he addressed the nation and he said, we are at war with COVID. And of course, France, and I experienced this, was subject to one of the most stringent draconian lockdowns anywhere in the world, which went on for over a year.
You had to have a piece of paper to leave your house that you'd signed saying what you were doing.
Absolutely. So that's why there's a good degree of cynicism over this. That this is Macron sort of because, of course, since his and we talked about this at the time, Julia, last June, he called this snap election, didn't work out well for him. He's lost his authority. His party is now the third largest party in the National Assembly. So he's disappeared. And really, you didn't see him much in France over the last 6 months of last year, and that was a blessed relief to a lot of French people. But of course, he's seen an opportunity now to get, because there's some what the French call reserve domains, which is defence and foreign policy. So this is his chance to really take centre stage again. And Macron, who's a consummate actor, is making the most of it.
And politicians, we know, and this happens in America, it happens in Britain, in France, everywhere. Politicians love being on the world stage. They love that. They're all, they're being very self-important. I think there's stuff. I'm actually very much on side with Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer in terms of their stance at the current time. But again, it does help, particularly, when you're unpopular on the domestic front, to play that card. One thing I'd like to come back on, though, which I'm sure I would challenge, if they reckon it's a €6 million cost to print those booklets. If it was for a private company, well, if it's the government, it'll probably have cost 14 million, because I imagine the French government is as bad at procurement as ours is. Do you think the vast majority of French people will be taking note of this, or will they just be sort of going? It's like when I got the booklet about Brexit ahead of the referendum, telling me about why I shouldn't vote for Leave, paid for by the government, by my own taxes, which I tore into a load of little pieces, put in an envelope and sent to number 10 Downing Street saying no thank you to make my point. And I genuinely did do that. I was absolutely incandescent about that. Do you think most French people are just going to look at it and say, I'm just going to pop to the bakery and get another loaf of bread, thank you very much?
Well, here we have a big age divide, Julia, because the younger generation, by which I mean really sort of the under 45s, under 50s, are much less deferential and more cynical because they've been exposed to the internet. And so these podcasts and other independent media, which doesn't, whereas the majority, particularly the broadcast media in France, is state-owned. So it very much toes the line. So you do get, I think it will work for over 60s who are, and of course, we know about Russia. So there is, these are uncertain times. But I think among the young people, particularly with Macron, who is just never misses an opportunity to grandstand, and can only frighten the people for so many times.
Absolutely. Gavin Mortimer, always so good to talk to you, French correspondent at the